What's going on, everybody? Thursday, it is March 24th. Wow, we're at the end of March already. I'm Ian Douglas. I'm the author of this website, techinterview.guide. Thanks for hanging out tonight. Just going to go through some backlogs of questions that I've had over the last couple of weeks. Apologize for not streaming. I had the worst head cold. I'm still a little bit stuffed up. You'll hear it a little bit in my voice, but had the worst head cold last week. There's just no way at all I was going to stream on Thursday or Sunday. But back up. Hope you're doing well. Good to see the usual little crew hanging out. Tech Dinosaur, Fan. Thanks for hanging out on the on my work stream earlier today. So as soon as I got off that work stream, it registered that I got more than 50 followers on my work account. But because that stream was so short, it didn't count how long everybody was there. And so to get affiliate status on Twitch, you have to have 50 followers, and you have to have an average of 3 viewers. And before that stream, I was at like 3.08 average viewers per stream. And I guess because of how everybody like kind of connected and then left kind of partway through, it actually dropped under 3. It was like 2.97 or something. So I'm gonna have to stream a couple more times just to get that average up over 3 people, and then make affiliate status on my work account. So big thank you to everybody that's helped me out there. Stay following that work account though. Don't give up on me yet. I got to get the affiliate status first. Then we'll celebrate, and then folks can drop off that don't want to follow my work account. Cool. Hope you're doing well. I did a workshop earlier today at Turing, and some folks kind of worked through what I did on my work stream on Tuesday, which is a workshop about building out a mock server using Postman. That was a bunch of fun. And then at the end of the session, I answered a couple of job-related questions and told everybody to come hang out on the stream. So we'll see. We'll see whether anybody actually drops by. If you're here and you're from Turing, feel free to drop a hello in Twitch. I'm not actually going to stream on LinkedIn for the foreseeable future. Still not getting, really high engagement on those other platforms. So I may just stay on Twitch at the time. But yeah, thanks for hanging out tonight. If you do stop by chat, do say hello. Let me know where you're from. You can drop questions in chat at any time. And I'm happy to kind of go off the rails a little bit with the questions that I've got queued up that I want to get to. But I also really enjoy having an engaging chat. So if you've got questions about what it's like to interview in the tech industry, I've got a lot of experience. Next month, so actually in 1 month and 4 days, is my 26th college graduation anniversary. So the end of April of 1996, I graduated college, and I've been in the tech industry ever since. Had a couple of breaks here and there, but those breaks weren't more than like a month or two. But I've been in the tech industry a long, long time. I've been a hiring manager. I've been a director of engineering. Been on interview panels. I've done 1,000 real interviews now. I've done I know I've done way over 3,000 mock interviews. I've got almost 1,200 alone on interviewing.com, like just close to 1,200 on their platform. And then like tons of resume reviews. So if you ever want a resume review, here's a link in chat that you can go check out. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and you can that notification bell. I do upload all of these live streams to YouTube after the fact. You can always watch them there if you can attend live. But if you do want to attend live, you're welcome to come hang out. So Thursday night and this Sunday is going to be the last Sunday evening that I do, and then I'm going to switch to earlier in the day on Sunday to accommodate some people who don't live in America. Hey Zooey, good to see you in chat. I had a handful of people kind of reach out and be like, "Hey, I like your advice. I like what you're talking about, but there's no way I can attend live. Like it's way too late at night, or way too early in the morning, depending on where they are." And so I want to try to accommodate as many folks as I can on the stream. And so to do that, I'm going to start streaming earlier on Sundays, but only on Sundays. And do it on Thursday because I work during the day. But during the day on Sunday, I would typically be doing like my usual like groceries and food prep and stuff like that. Um, but I'm gonna do the stream first, and then I'll go do all that. So that will be not this coming Sunday. This Sunday, I've got Taylor Dorset, who is also on YouTube. Let me go get his YouTube channel. Taylor does some really cool YouTube videos where he basically he acts as a candidate on YouTube and has other people interview him. And I did an interview with him a little while back. I haven't actually seen it air on YouTube, so I don't know whether he's actually gonna put that online or not. I don't know. I haven't seen it show up in the list yet, but I'm gonna have Taylor on the stream. Let me go get his URL here. Hey G&D, good to see you in chat. OU Moon, good to see you as well. Hello. So this is Taylor's YouTube channel, and I'll put all these links in the YouTube description later when I upload this to YouTube. But Taylor's going to be on the stream this coming Sunday night. Taylor can't do during the evening can't do during the daytime on Sunday. And so Taylor's going to join us on Sunday evening, and then that's going to be my last Sunday evening, and then I'm going to do Sunday like earlier in the day. Taiwanese name here. Taiwanese name with a new username. Hello, good to see you hanging out. Appreciate the new follow. And Bagged Head, good to have you come by as well. Give you all some clappy hands and some blinky lights. Thanks for dropping by. Yeah. Any resume reviews in the backlog for today? Not for today, but I am collecting resumes. And what I've decided is I'm just gonna batch up all the resumes and do like one resume review, like a month kind of thing. Because I'm not getting very many until they start coming in on a more regular basis. I'm probably only gonna do it once a month, and I may do it like, the first Thursday of the month or the first Sunday of the month or something like that. Is probably when I'll aim to do the resume reviews, and I'll just do them all in a batch. But as of right now, I'm not getting very many. I'm not getting very many on a frequent enough basis to do them like all the time. Well, let me just fix my lights. There we go. Something about the blinky light. It didn't pick up the new purple and white in the background. Although the camera makes it look really blue, but I promise it's all that really nice, rich purple color that I like to use on the website. So. The color of the font that you see down in the bottom corner there where it says Bagged Head's name as the latest follower, that's actually the color of these lights, but I guess with the camera it's showing up blue. I promise my wall is a nice vivid shade of purple right now. Yeah, thanks for up by. RC Maniac, good to see you in chat as well, for dropping by. So my work account has enough followers now to hit affiliate status. I need to stream like once or twice more to get the average viewership up over like 3 average viewers, but I have enough followers now, so don't unfollow my work account yet. But once I hit that affiliate status, then you can feel free to unfollow that account. But I appreciate everybody that followed Ian the Postmanot, as I'm doing my learning in public. I'm going to be streaming some fun stuff over the next week about building out an API to stream little bits of music. I'm working on a WebSocket where people can kind of vote for a time era of 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, 2010, and then vote for either rock or pop. And it's going to play like fragments of songs, and then as the voting goes up in one category, it's going to change the song over to the other song. So it's just going to be this wild mishmash of like 3-second clips as the voting goes up and down. Then once the voting kind of settles, then it's going to finish playing that song. It'd be pretty fun. We're going to use it for some in-person events that we're doing with Postman over the next couple of months. So I'm probably going to live stream about that tomorrow. Drop by. So that'll be on my Ian Postman. So what's this stream about? This is your first stream. Well, thanks for dropping by, Baghead. So I'm the author of this website, techinterview.guide, and I've been in the tech industry a long, long time, and I'm basically here just to help people learn about what it's like to do interviews in the tech industry. If you are looking for a job in the tech industry, if you want to get into software development, but you're curious about like how to prepare, how to research companies, how to get a resume review, all that kind of stuff is basically what my channel is. I do occasionally have guests on the stream. So we're going to have Taylor on the stream this coming Thursday. I don't think I have anybody lined up for April right now. I need to get on top of that and get some guests lined up for April. But Taylor works at levels.fyi, and Taylor's going to come be on the stream on Sunday. So that'll be a good time. We're going to learn a little bit about Taylor's background and the podcasts that he makes, and then the YouTube channel, which I dropped earlier, where you can go watch Taylor basically do the engineering side of technical challenges, where he basically acts as a candidate to do tech challenges on YouTube. So it'll be fun having Taylor on the stream for days. Beju says, I have an interview with Microsoft. Any tips for that? Yeah, get some sleep the night before. For Microsoft, I would say their technical challenges are pretty algorithm heavy. And I would say be prepared to volunteer as much as you can about like big O notation. Be really well prepared for kind of the top 5 algorithms like depth first search, breadth first search, backtracking algorithms, dynamic programming, and then just varying array problems like 2-pointer problems and sliding window problems, depending on the level that you're going in at. So you may need to remind me if you're like junior, intermediate, senior. I know that sounds like pretty generic advice that could apply for just about anybody going to any kind of job. But the FANG companies are really, really keen on you being able to scrutinize your own code and optimize your own code, and also look at ways of optimizing for time and space complexities. And so what I would typically recommend is when you see the prompt for the problem, work out some notes, work out some pseudocode, talk about it, find ways of optimizing it before you start on the real code. And if you can self-critique and go, well, now that I kind of see how I'm laying this out, I think I'm going to modify this or that. And it's a little bit easier to do if you write out some pseudocode ahead of time, before you start on the real code. Like just writing out notes is okay. If you can write it more like pseudocode, that's better. And then take that pseudocode and then write the real code based on that. That'll be probably your best plan of attack on that. And then like I said, being able to self-critique and look at that pseudocode and go, oh, you know what? Because of how I'm nesting this, I'm going to end up in like n squared territory, or, this is going to be like, 2n plus n log n plus, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes seeing the pseudocode, you can kind of figure out the math of the big O notation a little bit easier. But the FANG companies really, really care about those kinds of things. They're going to care about things like call stack and memory usage and memory footprint, like total memory footprint. Any large company that's going to have like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of users concurrently on their system, they're going to care a lot about call stack and memory footprint. And so as much as you can scrutinize about that before you start writing the code, better. If you can do it after writing the code, that's good too. But don't just write some crappy algorithm and expect that that's going to be enough. You need to be able to go in and like tell them why you did it a particular way and how you'd make it. So those would be the typical pieces of advice I would suggest for any of the FANG companies, not just Microsoft. Now, with FANG companies specifically, Facebook as part of Meta, Facebook specifically, and Amazon no longer ask dynamic programming questions as of last summer and last fall, respectively. And so you probably won't need to study those as much if you are going specifically for Amazon or Facebook. Now, if you're going for any of the other Meta companies under Facebook, like Facebook, like Snapchat and so on, you may still get asked a DP problem. I haven't heard yet that all of the Meta companies are no longer asking DP, but I have heard specifically that Facebook is no longer asking problem. Artsy Maniac asked in chat, you're getting someone from levels.fyi. Yeah. So Taylor Dorset is an engineer at levels.fyi, and they're going to be coming out on this. D&D 404 created a whole new resume and made it solely about tech and dev focus. Been working on some projects to fill it up with. Awesome. That's great. Yeah, if you want to send over a copy, I'm happy to do a review. Like I said, I'm probably going to batch them up until I get sort of enough. But if I just aim for like the first Sunday of the month or the first Thursday of the month is going to be like resume review day, then however many I have, I'm just going to go through all of those, and then I'll get to any like backlog questions. So yeah, please do send it in. Here's the link for the resume review. It's just techinterview.guide/resume review. There's a form on there that you can upload. I do suggest that you anonymize it because these videos do go up on YouTube later on. And I don't want you to expose like your real email address or your real phone number. Up to you if you want to even leave your real name on the resume, but if you can anonymize some of that information before submitting it, that would be best. Because I don't like blur anything out on the screen. I show the resume as you send it to me. And so there is a checkbox there that says like, I have either anonymized it or I'm okay showing it as is. And so just make sure that checkbox is checked when you send that in over the form. And then I think I'll aim for like the first Thursday of the month. And we'll just call that like resume review day. So that's coming up. So it won't be next Thursday. Next Thursday will be the 31st. So the Thursday after that will be resume review day. Yeah, so if you have resume reviews in the meantime, send those in, and I'll get to those on. Here, the Jeju says junior level. So if you're junior level, their expectations won't be as high. So kind of going back to the question about the FANG job, their expectation won't be as high. They will still hope, though, that you've got a pretty good handle on algorithmic thinking and problem solving. For entry-level devs, no matter what company you're going to, they're also going to be putting a little bit more emphasis on your overall process and your communication than just the hard, like, can you write code? Yes, they do want to see you write code. They want to see you write good code, but they're also evaluating a lot more about your process and about your communication than just, here's a problem, can you write some code? As you get into the more senior level roles, like even the intermediate level and senior level roles, they're not going to be paying as much attention to the process, but they're going to be paying a lot more attention to how you optimize your code. So I would say for more of the junior level, entry level kinds of jobs at those companies, I wouldn't worry as much about optimizing the code unless you're going to a FANG company. If you're going to a FANG company, you still need to be able to evaluate your code and have really good performance from a memory footprint standpoint, as well as the overall time execution standpoint. You want to try to optimize that as much as possible before writing the real code. So write out some notes, write out some pseudocode, optimize that pseudocode as much as you can, and then turn that into real code. Now, if you struggle and you can only get into a little bit of optimization, that's okay too. My job as an interviewer is to figure out what you know and what you don't know. And it's okay not to know all the things. That's another secret about tech interviews that a lot of people won't tell you. You don't have to know everything. My job is to evaluate what you do know. And so if there are things that you don't know, that's okay. My job to find those limits. I may keep asking questions to make sure I've really found that limit and hit that limit, and that you really, like, I've really exhausted your knowledge in a particular area. So as much as possible, try to optimize that code. But if you really can't, that's okay too. Again, they just want to evaluate your process and see how much you do. And then, and then they have like their own sort of rubric they score from there. But yeah, I would suggest like try to find somebody who works at Microsoft and see if they can do a mock interview with you. Like try to find somebody that can do mentorship. I don't always like to pitch interviewing.io because it is a paid platform, but they do defer interviews. You could sign up for interviewing.io and do like a mock interview with somebody at Microsoft and get Microsoft specific feedback. And then they'll defer the cost of that. So you don't have to pay for it up front. They'll defer the cost until you get the job. Or like 3 or 4 months, like whichever comes first. And so that might be a good way of approaching it as well, because then you get Microsoft specific feedback about what you did well, what you didn't do well, what you can work on, things like that. Egghead says, I should really learn coding before even worrying about this stuff. And now I'm invested. Well, we appreciate you coming by either way. You're totally welcome to ask questions as you go. We get a lot of new folks coming by, folks that are still exploring whether they want to get into tech, people that have started down that path. They've gone to like a code school or a boot camp of some kind. I've had people come by the stream who are in college or university. They're getting ready to graduate. I've had people like all across the board come by and ask questions. So you're absolutely welcome to be here. and ask as many questions as you like. Even if you haven't even learned coding yet, if you want to, figure out like how do I even learn code, there's going to be a whole lot of people in chat that are happy to kind of like give you some pointers and ideas on how they learned to code and how they got into the tech industry. My whole goal with this stream is not just here's Ian and all of my perspective. I like to have a whole bunch of folks in chat be able to share their perspectives and their ideas. That's also why I have people on the stream to help share their perspectives and their ideas. It's more than just there are a lot of people out there that want to help, who are really like fired up about helping you out. You just have to know where to find them, and this is a good place to get started. It's not the only place, but it's a good place to get started. We do have a Discord server. Let me do Discord. If you want to join the Discord community, you're welcome to do that. You can drop questions in there at any time. If you want to upload your resume for a review in there, you can send that in as well. I'll get all these links in the YouTube. Maniac said, I would comment to remember that FAANG companies also get tons of applicants. So either be as close to perfect as you can or do something that stands out. Doing something that stands out is sometimes easier said than done, but it is a really good way to kind of get noticed by those companies. But otherwise, yeah, they're looking for the best of the best. And so their interview processes are hard. They are difficult to get through. They ask very challenging questions. But I've also known people that have gone to those kinds of interviews and they're like, yeah, I did, I studied for 2-3 months and I got the job. I know other people that had to grind for like 9-10 months solid, like just nothing but grinding on leak code, and they barely got through the interview. So it really depends on kind of your position in life and how much time you have to study and how much time you have to prepare. Everyone's a little bit different. So there's no easy blanket statement of like, here's your 30-day plan to get a job at, a FAANG company. Those aren't going to exist. The recruiters there are going to have material that you can go study, and you can always defer the interviews. So if you don't feel like you're ready, you can always talk to the recruiter and say like, hey, I could use like another month to study and be really solid on this. And that's fine. They've got lots of roles open all the time. They're constantly hiring people all the time. It's no big deal for them to defer your interview. If you go apply at a smaller company and say like, hey, can I defer that interview for like another month? They may have a harder time deferring that interview because they're going to be a smaller company. They have fewer jobs open. They're going to want to fill that role now. So it's a lot less likely that you'll be able to defer an interview for a smaller company. Not impossible. Like if you do something really exceptional to really stand out, they may wait for it. But I would say if you're doing something that exceptional to where you get noticed by them, they're probably going to want to interview you regardless, and just say like, no, we think you're ready enough, like we really want you. So it's really up to you though at the end of the day. Scrolling back in chat here a little bit. Networking goes a long way. Yeah, Zooey's right on that. Networking goes a long way. That's how I made progress with getting more interviews versus just applying and working on projects. Zooey starts the job in 11 days. That's great. It's been a long wait. I'm excited to get started. They're putting me on a data engineering team. Sweet. It's going to be great, Zooey. I'm really, really excited for Zooey to start this job and get in the tech industry. You've definitely put in the grind for sure. With the networking and reaching out to people and working on projects to get noticed. Zooey's a good resource to reach out to and listen to some experience. Zooey, I think once you get settled in that job, I'd like to have you on the stream. If you're open to that. I think it would really encourage people to hear a little bit more about your journey and kind of the process that it took, and the time that it took. Just to encourage people, like it can take a long time to get that first job in tech. But I think it would really encourage people to hear more about your story and the journey and so on that you took. If you're open to it, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let me Egghead says you're currently working through a long C# book. Yeah, C# is actually a pretty good language to get started. It's kind of like a high-level version of C++. And I've dabbled in it a little bit. I haven't done a ton of development in C#, but it's a pretty good language. It's a pretty good one to get started. It's a little bit like Python. And so like learning, like once you learn a couple of languages, it becomes much easier to learn others. Depending on the time that you have and the kinds of projects that you want to build. You can it can make it a little bit easier. It's a little bit like spoken language. The more spoken languages you speak, the easier it is to pick up other dialects. And programming languages are very similar. It's just, you know, uh, what sort of dialect is language itself. All right, let's keep going through chat here. I already accepted. So Deju says I already accepted an offer with a different company other than Microsoft, but the start date is in July. Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I remember this now. I'm doing the Microsoft interview just for the opportunity. If I get an offer from Microsoft and it's better than the one I accepted already, would it be bad to tell the other company I found another job? No, you haven't started there yet. And if they were sort of delaying you until July anyway, you just say like, hey, I needed a job now. I applied for this other job. I got this other job. It's no big deal. And they'll still have a couple of months to like go hire someone. It's not the best thing for them because they're like, all right, cool. We got somebody hired. It's in the bag. It's like, it's taken care of. And then for you to turn around and say like, oh, just kidding. I'm not going to take the job. Now, yeah, you are going to kind of burn a bridge there a little bit, but it's a business decision. You have to do what's right for you. The same way that they're making a business decision about whether to extend the offer to you or not, they're making the same kind of business decision about you. You need to make that decision yourself and say like, no, I needed a job now and I went for this other job and I got it. I don't think they'll be too surprised. If they were the one that put you off until July, I wouldn't worry too much about hurting their feelings about backing out on the job. Now, if they extended the offer and you said, I can't start until July, and now they're sitting there waiting for you, then that's a little bit worse. And like I said, either way, you're going to burn a bridge a little bit with them. But at the end of the day, it's your career. So you get to choose the path that your career takes. And if that takes you to some other company, then great. Either way, you got a tech job. I wouldn't worry too much about it. It's bad, but it's not the end of the world. Like you're not going to get like blacklisted from, you know, tech and say like, oh, you'll never work in this industry again. Like that's like a very Hollywood kind of move. We're not like that in the tech industry. You have to do something really, really egregious to like, you know, have your name, you know, well known enough that nobody wants to hire you. That's a really, really rare thing to happen. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. G&D asks, how would you go about linking back to a project you did under the guise of a company to your personal resume? Do you just leave out the middleman? If I understand the question right, if you did a project for another company, is this like a take-home project, GND 404, or was it like a take-home, or was it a project that you actually worked on for like freelance work or something like that? If it was just a take-home assignment, yeah, you can put that on your repo. It would be a little weird to put it on the resume and say, oh, this is a project that I did for this other company when I interviewed there. You could just say this is a project that I worked on and not mention that it was for an interview. I think it's totally okay. As long as you didn't sign a non-disclosure that you're not allowed to share it, then yeah, you can share it. You can put it on your GitHub repo. You can put it on your resume. I would just take out any notes saying that it was specifically like a take-home assignment for an interview process for such and such a company. I would just rewrite the README and just say like, this is a project where a user can go in and manipulate data, blah, 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 and just talk about what the project does and not why or how you came about getting that project. That makes sense. I would just change up kind of the introduction to that project. Zooey gives some advice to Jay. You can mention to Microsoft you have an offer if you want to speed it up. If Microsoft does offer and you think it's a better fit, take it. Yeah, I agree. You can speed up a company if you have another job offer, but you never want to bluff and lie and say, oh yeah, I totally have this other job offer. Because that other company could say, well, if you got a job offer, just take that other job. So you never want to lie about that. You want to be honest. If you have a job offer, tell them. They may ask you for some specifics about it. Like how much is the offer, who's it with. But you know, it's up to you how much of that information you want to share with them too. But I'm usually pretty open with recruiters. Like when I had all of my offers back in January, I was calling up the recruiter saying, I got an offer from this company for this much money. I got an offer from this company for this much money. I got an offer from this company for this much money. Like, here's where you stand. And some of them came back and they altered their job offers. Some of them couldn't move their job offers, but at least they knew where they stood. And so when I would call them back and say like, hey, your job offer was like the lowest one on the pack, I can't take it. it wasn't a surprise. So it's really up to you how open you want to be about that. Me personally, I'm in a position now in my career where it's like, I don't care. I'm just gonna tell them. If they want to argue about it, that's on them. But I was always pretty upfront about it. You don't have to be as upfront. You can just say like, hey, I have an offer in hand for X amount of dollars. You don't have to say who the company is. You can just say I have an offer for, this much money. I wouldn't give them a range and say I have an offer somewhere between this dollar amount and this dollar amount. But I would just call them up and say, hey, I've got an offer in hand. Those are the 3 magic words: offer in hand. I have an offer in hand, this much money. I'd really rather work for you. What can we do to speed up the process? And it's amazing what recruiters will do to speed up that process. I'm going back to the chat here. For C#, any tips on learning it? There is a guy that I started looking at who does a whole bunch of free C# stuff. Tim Corey. Corey. He's got a ton of free C# material on. All right, I just opened up his YouTube channel. So here's a link to Tim Corey's YouTube channel. He's got tons of stuff on here about C#. He gives it away for free. You can go to his website and you can get it for free. If you can afford to, he'll take your money. But if you can't afford to, he'll give you all the course stuff for free, or you can just watch it on YouTube for free. But if you want like a curated, like do this, then do this, then do this, then do this, it's like a couple $100. But it's all free. You can just go consume this stuff as much as you want on YouTube. I actually sat down and had a call with him a couple of months back. I want to say like October, November. And it was amazing. This guy was just like a fountain of knowledge, because I was asking him like, how do you like, you give away your content for free, but you also charge people for your content? And basically his mindset was, I talk to people that want the content and I tell them, if you can afford it, please buy it, because then that allows me to keep creating more content for people that can't afford it. And I thought it was a really interesting business model where people that can afford it pay for it, and that helps pay him to then keep creating more free content for those that can't afford it. And I actually explored this a little bit. I did a LinkedIn poll back in October, November, whenever like literally the day after I got off the phone with him. I put a poll up on LinkedIn saying like, should I be doing this with Tech Interview Guide? Like, should I be charging for this content? But if you can't afford it, you get it for free. Like if you hang out on the stream, you get it for free. But if you want like curated FAQs, like you pay some amount of money. At the same time, I've always done this for free. Like I don't do this to make money. I love having followers. I don't care if you subscribe. If you've already got a Prime, Amazon Prime account, you want to subscribe with Prime, great. Send Jeff Bezos money. But you don't have to spend your own money to subscribe to my channel. I do all this for free. But his business model was really interesting, and his business took off. Like his business has been doing really, really well. It's to the point he told me on the call where he went from building content by himself, now having a couple of staff members help with video editing, content editing, and all this stuff. He was able to grow that well enough by charging people that could afford it. But if you can't, it's all free on YouTube. I'm like, pretty cool business model. So that would be my recommendation. If you want to learn C#, go check out Tim Corey on YouTube. I know I'm way behind on chat. Bear with me. Doing wants to be on stream. Yeah, so Jay's kind of like filling in other sort of background and content about the job you're starting in July, with like this 1 year sort of like internship, learn to code, get a career. G&D asks, as the project was a side thing. Let's say on the project the owner is G&D 404. How do I link that project on a resume? I would say if it's just a side project, just link it on the resume. Say this is like a little side project that I've been working on. This is what it does. This is what users do. The same way that I would talk about any project. This is what the user does. This is what I've learned while building it. This is the tech stack I use. really all you need to explain. If they want more information, they'll ask. But you want to try to keep the most relevant projects on the resume for that particular company. So, kind of going into what I would typically say about resumes, make really, really big resumes. Put every project, every skill, every library you've ever used, put everything on that resume. Then, when you go to apply for a job, trim it back down to one page of just the projects and the skills that that company cares about. Only leave that particular project, like include that on the resume if that company's going to care about that project more than other projects that you've done. If you've only got a couple of projects, then that's all you have, and so you would leave all of them on the resume. But if you have enough choice of the projects that you've built where you can like take some of them off to get that page or get that back down to one page, then only include the projects and the skills that that company's going to care about. That's the most important information they need to see on the resume. They're looking at that resume going, do you have the skill that we need for you to do this job? That's all they care about when they're looking at that resume. They don't need the whole backstory, the back history. They don't need every project you've ever done, every language you've ever written, every library you've ever used. You only want to list the stuff that's relevant to them. Everything else can get trimmed out. Like, do I say on my resume that I am G&D 404? I would say, honestly, if it's a side project, it's just you. So just say, this is a side project that I have built. You know, you're not really like a business owner and you've made this project for a business owner because you are the owner of that project and the project was for you anyway. I would just say this is a side project that I built. Now, if it is like a money maker or something that you want to turn into like a potential money making kind of project, you can talk about that during the interview. I wouldn't put that kind of stuff on the resume. I would just say this is the project I built. This is what I learned while building it. This is the tech stack I use. That's really all you need to talk about on the resume. Um, RC Maniac says my personal. I put that my personal GitHub is RC Maniac 25 on my resume. Yeah, I do too. I mean, most tech recruiters are going to want to see like GitHub and LinkedIn and all that stuff on a resume anyway. So yeah, just link all that stuff on your GitHub and just let them go from there. If they've got questions about it, they'll ask more questions. Zooey asked a question. I've been doing a lot of mock interviews with other graduates from the school that Zooey went to. It's amazing when I hear them getting offers or feeling good about themselves after doing interviews. The best story was someone who was planning on giving up on UI UX. Talk them through what makes them passionate. Now they're applying with big name companies, bring their personal stories. It feels great. Yeah. It feels really good to like take knowledge that you've learned and like help someone else with that. And that's really what I'm all about here. I've accumulated 26 years of knowledge in the tech industry, and I want to give that out to other people. So yeah, it's amazing that you're doing that. I appreciate that you're taking the time to do mock interviews and help out other students. It's great. Um, RC Maniac says in chat, open source is split into two camps. One is this is free and open because it shouldn't be behind a paywall, and the other one is this is open because we can. They both have pros and cons. Yep, I think that's a good way of thinking about it. Like we're giving this away for free because we can, versus we want this to be open because we want accountability. I think that there are definite mindsets around that. Like we want the community to help with this so that it's got more than just our eyeballs on the project. We want the whole community to be involved. We want scrutiny. We want accountability. I think those make some of the best open source projects, to be honest, where a company will start a thing and then the community kind of rallies around that and continues to make it better. I think that that's the best kind of project. Cool. Yeah, definitely keep asking questions in chat. I'm going to pull up Discord here. I do have a couple of backlog questions I want to get through. Um, Not a ton. We'll see how many we get through. I'll probably stream for another hour or so and then call it a night. But I do have a couple of backlog questions. But if you do have other questions or other comments and things like that, please do drop it in chat, and we'll continue to chat about that as we go. Right. So I had a question that, and so when people ask me questions on LinkedIn and Twitter, people send me direct messages all the time. They send me direct messages on Discord, and I'm dropping them in my Discord community under a channel called Anonymous Questions, and I don't attach their name to it. So if you ever want to ask me a question anonymously, You can whisper to me on Twitch. You can send it to me over direct message on Twitter, on LinkedIn. I use the same username on all those platforms. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, it's just Ian Douglas 736. Same username on Twitter. You're welcome to reach out, connect with me, send me questions. I'll typically answer them for you, but then I'll bring the question over to the Discord channel just so other people can see, like, this is a question I was given. And I'll usually reword it and rephrase it and things like that. And I may give a little bit of backstory around how and why this question came to my attention, but I'm never going to put your name on it. So the only time that a question is going to have your name on it is if you come hang out in Twitch, you actually like drop a question in the chat and it shows up over here in that panel over on the left side of the interface. So that's the only time that I'm actually going to like say like, oh, Zooey asked a question about such and such, or RC Maniac asked a question, such and such. But when you ask me a question anonymously, I'm just going to say, hey, I had this question come in. This is the question. Here's my thoughts. Here's my perspective. Um, Zooey asked in chat, I do have a question about part of a description for my job. Databases are primarily Oracle with some limited SQL Server. Does that mean I should learn Oracle? Yep. Oracle has a slightly different way of how it's managing storage on a machine, at least back when I used Oracle. Oracle basically had its own, at the time, Oracle had its own storage mechanism for how the actual raw data got stored on disk. It had to sort of pre-partition that data in a way that it knew how to like really optimally write and read into that block of disk. It may be a little bit different since then, but Oracle also bought MySQL. So if you're going to be using Oracle, I know that they've been kind of dabbling a little bit back and forth um, with MySQL, and the whole community kind of forked MySQL and it turned into MariaDB. And so that's kind of the community version of MySQL now. I would say if they're primarily using Oracle, Oracle SQL is not very different from standard SQL. SQL, though, is a little bit like programming languages where the core structure of it is going to be the same. Selecting field from table where filter equals blah. Like that same statement could get put, copied and pasted in uh, most SQL engines, whether it's SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, Postgres, SQLite. All of those are going to handle basic SQL syntax. Where you start getting into a lot more of the differences, it has to do a little bit with the data types of the fields and the capabilities sort of under the hood of the database engine itself. So yeah, I would probably study up a little bit on Oracle. At the same time, I wouldn't spend a ton of your time getting into that. That's what their training is going to be for and their onboarding process. So they're going to be training you on the things that you need to know at the job. I wouldn't worry too much about it. Yes, you could look into it, at least so you're kind of hitting the ground walking, maybe not hitting the ground running. But I think that you could do a little bit of uh, reading ahead of time, but I wouldn't go too deep on it, to be honest. I think the work that, if I remember right, you did some work in, was it Mongo or Postgres? If you worked in Postgres, you're going to have like probably 80% of what you're going to need for this job. SQL Server is the Microsoft SQL Server. Again, it's going to conform to sort of the standard SQL syntax, but they're going to have their own flair and their own little thing on there, the same as Oracle. But at the end of the day, they're all going to adhere to kind of the core SQL language. But then there are going to be like slight variants. Hopefully, though, whatever programming language you're using has an ORM library or object relational mapper, which is going to kind of abstract away what the low level database engine actually needs you to do. And you'll just be building objects in whatever language that you're working in. And then that ORM is going to abstract like how to actually speak that different dialect. I think of it a little bit like C3PO, right? C3PO in Star Wars can speak, millions of dialects of languages and whatever. And SQL's kind of the same way. It's mostly the same from one SQL server to the next. But there are slight variations and slight differences. And the ORM is basically acting like C3PO to do that translation for you. So if you've got a good ORM, you probably won't need to worry too much about it. If you're writing raw SQL down to that database layer, I would have serious security concerns about why they're letting entry level devs write raw SQL statements directly into a database like that. I really, really hope they're letting you use an ORM. Um, it's going to be much, much easier to manage because it abstracts away so much of that from you that you don't really need to worry about it. Baghead says, talking about code sounds like a Star Trek episode. Yep, I agree. It is, it is its own, it is its own kind of community and communication and so on. Once you spend a little bit of time around the community, though, you start to pick up on the lingo and the meanings behind phrases and things like that. It'll make sense as you get in and learn things. For sure. G&D also asked in chat, what's the best way to express that you don't have much formal tech education on a resume? Um, you just let your projects and work experience speak for itself, or do you call out that you're mainly self-taught? I agree with RC Maniac. Don't call out your inexperience. Um, I used to do that on my resumes. I used to say like, "Oh yeah, I've done all these programming languages, but I'm actually not very good at object-oriented programming." Well, turns out I was. I just didn't think I was. And most of it was because I didn't want to go to interviews and have them ask about like, what are the four pillars of object-oriented? Is like abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and I always forget the fourth one. Like, I don't want to look like a dummy in an interview. And so I would just tell people like, I'm not very good at object-oriented programming, but I am. I just didn't want to talk about it in an interview. Well, it turns out that putting that kind of stuff on a resume, recruiters just would never call. Like when I had that phrase on my resume, I got way fewer calls because I was pointing out things that I wasn't good at. So yeah, I would not put that stuff on the resume. If they're curious about how you're learning things, they'll ask. They'll look at your resume and go, "Oh, you didn't actually go to college to learn this. You didn't go to a code school to learn this. Like, how did you actually learn this?" They'll ask you on that call and just say, "You know what? I've been really keen on tech and I've been exploring all these projects and I've been talking to people about what kinds of projects to learn to kind of pick up the experience that I'm going to need to get a job in the industry. So these are the projects that I've done. This is what I've learned from them. And this is kind of my learning goal. This is the learning path that I want to take, over the next year or two of things that I want to learn and the experience that I want to grow. But don't call out the inexperience and say, "Oh yeah, I don't know that. I don't know that. I don't know that." And like, really new at this or that. I wouldn't call that out at all. Yeah, I agree with RC Maniac there. Don't call out your inexperience. Baghead asks, is code the only way to get into the tech industry, or are there other possible routes to take? There are other routes. Depending on the background that you have, there are other types of positions that you can get into. Some people will start in like a customer support kind of role or like a testing kind of role where you're just writing little scripts to test that software is working properly. Although that does kind of feel a little bit like software development. Some people, though, they'll get their foot in the door by working in a customer support kind of role, and then they'll learn tech on the side. And I usually tell people, like, when you go apply for that tech job, make it sound as if you took that customer service job on purpose and just say, like, I wanted to make sure that when I got into development, I really understood things from the user's point of view. And so I got that first job doing customer support so that I could be as empathetic as I possibly could be for what the user is going to experience and what the user is going through as they're using my software. And so I did that on purpose to make me a better developer. That's a much stronger statement than like, "Oh, yeah, I wanted some kind of job in tech, and so I took a customer service job." I mean, that's fine, but it sounds way better when you use the first explanation, where you make it sound like you did it on purpose. And so there are people that will get into tangential roles, as we call them, or tech adjacent kinds of roles, where you can rely on other experience. You could go through like sales or marketing. If you've got a background in that, you can just go do that kind of work at a tech company. And while you're there, start to learn from the people that are there and just say like, "Hey, I'm kind of curious about software development. Like, where would I get started on that?" And see if folks can give you some ideas and pointers. Uh, that would be a great way to get started. But again, when you learn enough to then go apply for those jobs, you want to make it sound like you did that on purpose. I went through marketing on purpose because I wanted to understand like what the sort of user psychology was of how to come up with a solid product and how to explain that product and how to like do a really good job talking about the features and what it could do. And now that made me a better developer because of this. And I did that on purpose. Kind of like you don't necessarily have to use the words like I did that on purpose, but that's kind of the feeling that you want to give them when you're applying for an actual developer job next. Is you want to make it sound like I did that on purpose so it would make me a better developer. That's really the point that you want to get across. And Zooey says in chat, there are a lot of non-coding roles in tech, but coding does help. Yeah, I agree. Um, but yeah, it depends on the pace that you want to learn. It depends on how much time you have to dedicate to learning it, um, and who's around you to kind of mentor you and help you with your learning and so on. There are a lot of avenues to get into the tech industry for sure. Egghead says, I wish my current tech classes would teach this kind of thing. I mean, tell them to hire me to come teach a class. I've done it. I've worked with a lot of schools around the country where I've gone and given talks. That's how I met Zooey. I met Zooey through their school, and I went back, I think, 2 or 3 times to give talks there. But yeah, it's I'm totally happy to dive in and help schools and share a little bit of experience from that. Dota 2, good to see you in chat. Thanks for dropping by in a little bit. See some blinky lights and stars. Although that's gonna mess with my lights now again. Well, do them on that random pattern. Oh, it did go back. Never mind. Oh, cool. Um, cool. Well, let's get to a couple of these backlog questions that I've got in Discord, and then if you if you've got other questions, please continue to drop them in chat. I'm happy to chat about that as we go. So someone that I was mentoring recently, they said, how can I prepare over the next 4 months to be able to pass a FANG company interview? If I'm not very good with algorithms and data structures, but have 5 years developing software. So to kind of rephrase this, they've been a software developer for 5 years, but they know they're not very good at algorithms and data structures. They want to know, how can I plan out the next 4 months that I can go get a job at a FANG company? 4 months is a pretty aggressive timeline if you know that you're not good at data structures and algorithms, to be able to get into that mindset of breaking a problem down and and working through the problem solving. That said, you can go check out my YouTube channel. I've got a couple of videos on there specifically about LeetCode, about shortcutting the LeetCode grind. And there's two things on there. One of them is coming up with a schedule where you're regularly and routinely going through different patterns of problems. And the second one is, how do you go look at other people's answers on LeetCode to turn their code into pseudocode so that you can study the strategies of how to solve that kind of problem. And so it's kind of twofold. One is knowing like, okay, today I'm just going to study this kind of problem. I'm just going to focus on this particular type of array problem. Let's say 2 pointers. So I'm just going to study 2 pointer problems today. And so now I'm going to go look at other people's answers and then kind of sketch out some high level notes about how they approach the problem, so that the next time I try to tackle a 2 pointer problem, I have some ideas of how other people have solved it. So you can go watch those two videos. They're about 45 minutes each. And I go through a lot of examples. So you can kind of skip through them a little bit. Although, if you want to watch the whole thing, that would help me out on YouTube from an SEO perspective and engagement. But they are a little bit long. But they're about 45 minutes each, where I just talk like, here's how to build that schedule. Here's how to kind of routinely go through these things and using a guy's website. His name is Sean Rashad. I've had him on the stream last year. And then the second video is like, how do we turn other people's answers into pseudocodes so that we can study the strategy? Understanding the strategy of problems is probably the number one barrier in a technical challenge in an interview. When they say, here's a problem that I want you to go write some software to solve. Being able to take that problem, break it into steps, and being able to solve each of those steps and come up with an entire solution is probably the hardest part of a technical challenge. Recognizing what kind of problem is this? Is it a backtracking problem? Is it an array problem? Is it a 2 by 2 grid problem? Is it a heap problem? Should I use a depth first search? Should I use dynamic programming? Understanding what the pattern of the problem is probably half of the challenge, honestly. Once you identify what kind of pattern it is, then having studied a number of strategies to say, okay, I'm pretty sure that this is going to be a backtracking problem. These are the generalized steps that I would typically follow for a backtracking problem. Let me see if that applies here. Let me write out some pseudocode. Let me see if that is actually applicable to this problem. Yeah, that seems to fit. So, okay, this is how I'm going to move forward in this problem. The downside is in a technical challenge, you have a very limited amount of time. And so you really need to do a lot of training and a lot of practice to where your brain, not automatically, but very close to automatically, can read a prompt and go, oh, yeah, that's a depth first search problem. Oh, yeah, that's a heap problem. Oh, yeah, that's a sliding window problem. Being able to detect that is going to get your brain kind of recalling those strategies a lot faster. And then you're going to have a much easier time solving that problem, hopefully. But it really comes down to the detection of the pattern and then having studied enough strategies that once you figure out the pattern, you have a couple of strategies that you can draw from and then actually go write the code. So I would say for like there's about a dozen patterns out there. There are, I would say half of those are like the most popular. Depth first search, breadth first search, dynamic programming, backtracking algorithms, and then arrays and heaps. And I would say arrays kind of incorporate like 2 pointers, 2 by 2 grid, sliding window. Those all tend to be array problems. Once you understand those 6 patterns, then go study like 2 strategies for each of those. Once you have a handle on those, you're probably in a much better position to then go apply for a job with a FANG company. But it's going to be regular routine practice. Like literally every day, you're going to be doing a handful of these problems every single day to get ready for that interview. If you've only got 4 months, it's going to be a pretty aggressive timeline. When you know that you're not good at it, you're going to have to knuckle down and do it. But those would be the shortcuts that I would recommend. Come up with a regular schedule and then go study the heck out of the strategies of how to solve those most common patterns. Don't ignore the other ones. Don't just say, well, those were the top 6 that Ian mentioned. That doesn't mean you don't study the others, but those are the more popular ones that you're more likely to get asked. And so you, in that rotation that you build, you probably want to study those ones a little bit more frequently, but it doesn't mean don't study the other ones. There are other books out there like Cracking the Coding Interview, Grokking the Coding Interview. There are a handful of those books that you can go through and learn. And again, you'll see other people's perspectives on how to solve different patterns of problems. Those books will also be helpful. But again, it comes down to how much time do you have to actually dedicate to this? And it's that amount of time that's going to be your biggest barrier. If you know you've only got 4 months to do it, again, like I said, it's a pretty aggressive timeline. You probably could do it, but it's going to require like a lot of effort. Looking back on chat here a little bit. Most of coding is expected for you to be able to learn on your own. School just lays down some foundation. Yeah, that's true. Um, I would say that's kind of the principle behind most college and university kind of programs anyway. They're going to give you that foundation, then you still have to go continue to learn and grow and so on. Like it's not like you go learn everything about it in that 2 year school or 4 year school, and then you never, ever, ever, ever have to learn anything else about it. Um, Especially in the tech industry. In the tech industry, things are constantly changing. So you're constantly learning. And so most of the best schools are going to teach you how to learn and how to go teach yourself things because there's so much to learn out there for sure. Indy says it's just how it goes. Look at the teachers Look at teachers more for asking questions when you're stumped than having them actually teach you. For dev jobs, they're paying you more for your problem solving skills versus memorizing code. Yeah, I agree. They want to know that they can give you something novel and that you're going to figure out how to do it, as opposed to just having memorized algorithms and memorized answers to problems. There is some amount of memorization. Like I can sit down and I can like write out a little bit of Python code or a little bit of JavaScript code or a little bit of Ruby code or whatever because I've done it enough. I've kind of memorized how to sort of structure some code. But that's only going to get me so far when I've got like a novel problem to actually go solve. I need to go figure out, well, how do I break this down and actually go solve? That's actually the hardest part of working in code is like, how do I break this down and now how do I go solve that piece of it? And how do I do that in software in a way that it's going to sort of plug in and fit well with all of the other software that I have to write? Like I wouldn't go write this one bit of code in some other programming language because it's more convenient if it's not going to interface well with other code that I have to write that has to talk to that block of code. You want to kind of figure out, well, how do I do all of this in the same language or the same framework and so on. So there's a lot more work involved in that for sure. Zooey says the thing I asked in an interview is, what do you wish more new developers would do to be more successful? A few of them told me they wish that people ask more questions early in their career. The more successful ones have asked questions instead of wasting countless hours trying to figure out a problem. There is there is some benefit though, just spending time and struggling through and finding your own answer. But knowing when you've done that enough and now it's time to go ask someone for help is an important distinction. So knowing when to ask for help. Like work on it, work out on your own, like work through it on your own as much as you can. But you need to recognize when your efforts are no longer fruitful, they're no longer making progress, that it feels like you're kind of spinning in circles. At that point, you need to just stop and ask somebody else for help because, um, like, just banging your head on the desk and doing the same thing over and over and over again, it's just going to give you the same result. And unless you get someone else's perspective to kind of get you over a hurdle, it's going to be much harder to figure out on your own. It's not impossible to figure out on your own, but there is there is a point of diminishing return on trying to figure it out yourself versus when is it time to ask someone else for help. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges that I've seen. When I was a software teacher for almost 4 years. And in that time, I had to be careful not to just give a student an answer. Like if Zooey was my student and Zooey came to me and said like, "Hey, I'm really stuck on this part of the software." I could just give them the answer. It's not necessarily going to help their learning. And so my typical sort of MO as a teacher was, if you want help on your project, how far away is that due date? If it's far away, I'm just going to kind of point you in the right direction and give you a nudge in that direction. Say like, go look up this term and go see if that helps. And then like nudge you in that direction and hope that you're going to pick up on that hint. If it's like the day before the project is due and you're like super stuck, I'm probably just going to give you the answer because I want to see how much extra progress you're going to make. That's how I worked as an instructor. But in the real industry, you kind of have to figure out how to do things on your own. But there is a time when you need to ask for help. And that's why you have a team. You're not meant to be a solo worker drone who only works by yourself. You're there to, like, you have a team, rely on that team. Ask the team for help. Ask them when you're stuck. And so being able to do a little bit of that work and then go to them and say, "Hey, I've tried this, I've tried this, I've tried this. I'm getting these answers instead. What should I be doing differently? Can you point me in the right direction?" You're way more likely to get someone to point you in the right direction than if you just go to them and be like, "Tried a million things and nothing works." Like, well, they're going to sit and they're going to ask you what you've tried. Have you tried this? 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 And if you just say like, yeah, 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 I've tried all that stuff. Like, well, now you've just wasted an hour of conversation where it's just going down a checklist of things that you've tried. So if you can go to them and say, "I've tried this, I've tried this, I've tried this. What else can I do?" You're you're kind of speeding up that process a little bit. But knowing when to ask for help. is a big part of working in tech, and a big part, honestly, of just working as a mature adult. Like knowing when to work as a team and when it's no longer time to put in solo effort. When is it time to rely on the team to get the job done? Baghead says, I'm hoping to graduate with a technical degree. Awesome. Good for you. Yeah, definitely keep at it. Um, Working in tech is really, really rewarding in a lot of ways. And it is a process and it is time consuming sometimes. Totally worth it. There's no shortcut to it. There's no shortcut to like, oh, go take this one class and now you're guaranteed to get a job. Um, there's nothing out there like. But you can go learn the basics and then figure out how you want to apply those basics to solve other projects, other problems, and gradually build up that experience to where then you can go apply for a job. Cool. I think I'm going to get through one more question here and then I might wrap up for the night. Um, Mark this one answered. A tech interviewer once got me stuck with a question. They asked, so the open closed principle states that you should not modify existing behavior. What if there's a bug? Don't you fix it? How was I supposed to answer this? So the idea with the open close principle is that you want your code to be open enough for people to understand what it does, but you want to be closed to making changes. But if you find a bug in the software, that doesn't mean you can't go fix it. So it's a bit of a trick question. If there's a problem with the code, you have to alter it. The idea with open close principle, though, is that you should never break backward compatibility, that other people that are relying on your code expect it to be working in a particular way. But if there's a bug in the code, yeah, you absolutely have to go fix it. But this is where, like, if you're building out an API, for example, you might get into like versioning your code and say, okay, well, that was version 1. Now I'm going to build out version 2. It's going to be slightly different. So if you still need to keep using version 1, you can, but it's going to get shut off in 2 months. Meanwhile, we've got version 2, and version 2 fixes these bugs and these problems, but you're going to have to change your code to use this instead. So I would probably answer that question about like doing versioning if possible, and then having some sort of deprecation window where you're going to shut off that old code in some amount of time. Because if there is a bug, yeah, you absolutely have to fix it. Open close principle doesn't mean you can't fix a bug. It's really more about backward compatibility and making sure that people can see what's happening in your code, but that you're not open to making interface changes. But if there's a bug in how you're processing things, that shouldn't impact the interface to the software. It should just impact the answer that you get from the software. Like if I write a function that, is supposed to add two numbers together, but really it multiplies them instead, well, the interface is like calling my function with two parameters. It doesn't change the interface, it just changes the answer that I get. So it's a bit of a trick question. Um, and I think with experience, you would be able to detect when an answer is like meant to sort of trip you up. Um, I used to ask a question. It wasn't really a trick question, but it was like, how do you minimize, like, if you've got several versions of an API or several versions of your software and you find a bug, how do you minimize how much work you have to do to fix that bug? And most people would be like, well, I would just go in and I would change, like I would update each version of the code. And my counterpoint to that is, well, you shouldn't be changing it in more than one place. If all of this stuff relies on sort of common code, that common code should be extracted out into its own library. Now you've got one place to go fix it, where everything else is just kind of an interface into that code. Um, so that would be more of an architecture and code structure kind of answer. But again, you learn that kind of stuff over time with experience. It's not necessarily something you're going to learn as a student and something that you're going to learn as like being really early in the community and early in the industry. It's something that you kind of learn over time. So it is a bit of a trick question. I would say like just with experience, you'll be able to answer those questions a little bit better. But the idea of open closed is not that you can't change the answer that you're getting. You're just not supposed to change the interface to it. Someone else asked, Do you think it's better to do interviews virtually or in person, and why? I think there are definitely pros and cons to doing both in-person interviews and remote interviews. I actually miss being around other people. As much as I love my family and my dog, I can't wait for the day that I can like go work around other people again and like do live workshops and so on. I'm not like super extroverted, but I do feed off a little bit of that energy of like, helping people out and teaching people and so on. Think with live interviews, like in-person interviews, the main drawback is you have to travel there, you have to figure out where to park, you have to dress. Like, I mean, I always wear pants, but like, you only see me from here up. You don't even know necessarily that I'm wearing a Captain America t-shirt because you only see a certain amount of it on the camera. Um, in a virtual environment, though, you get to be comfortable. You have all your notes around you. I've got lots and lots of screens, and so I can look at the camera and pretend I'm talking directly to you. And if I need like a moment to reflect and think about something, I could go look over here and go, "Oh yeah, how would I answer that question?" And really, I'm like reading a bunch of notes on that monitor over there, or I'm reading a bunch of notes over here on this monitor over here, and I could just pretend that I'm like kind of lost in thought and kind of glancing around a little bit when really I'm like looking at answers. So there are benefits to having like remote interviews in that regard. Um, but I would say like don't rely too heavily on having notes and everything at the ready when you're doing virtual interviews. But in a virtual interview, you get to be comfortable. You don't have to travel. You have everything around you that you need, but you do have to make sure that you're not being distracted. Like, what if my dog starts barking something? Or, what if my kid comes running by or they need help with something and I'm in the middle of a phone call? Like, do I tell them like, "Hey, I can't talk to you right now. I don't care how much you're bleeding on the floor. I've got an interview to do." Or it's like, "Oh, you know what? I need to excuse myself for a moment on the call. Be right back." But if I was traveling to that interview, like I wouldn't be there to, you know, help get the band-aid anyway. So there are pros and cons to in person versus virtual. I think in person as an interviewer, in person, I can usually tell a lot more easily that someone is nervous and how much they know and how much they don't know than over a virtual connection. When I'm interviewing someone over a camera, it's a lot harder to tell, like, are they looking up notes? Are they actually typing things? Like, if they've got a super quiet keyboard, can I even tell if they're like Googling the answer to my question if they don't know something? It's a lot harder to detect that sort of thing as an interviewer. Um, there, but again, there's pros and cons on all these things. Um, it's definitely nerve wracking to be live where you know that you're sitting across a desk from somebody and they're watching you code. It's not that different though when it's a virtual thing and I'm sharing my screen and you see everything on my screen and you see how I'm like looking up documentation and working through a process and things like that. So there are pros and cons. I don't know that it's necessarily better to do one over the other aside from the fact that in the tech industry, a lot more of what we do is going to be remote. And so having remote interviews, I think, just helps to streamline that process a little bit more. It allows companies to find talent in locations that they wouldn't otherwise have because not every company is going to fly people like around the country to come attend an in-person interview. They're going to want to do those interviews remotely. Um, and a lot more tech companies right now, they don't care where you live. There are companies that are kind of toying with the idea of like, oh, we want you back in the office someday. Like, I'd really rather stay remote. So you need to have that conversation with your company. We've talked about that on the stream too. Like, how do you have that conversation with your company? Or, if the company's like, you must be back in the office by May 1st, it's like, well, then I'm going to go find a new job by May 1st because I'm not coming back to an office. It's really up to you how you want to kind of make that move. You're in charge of your career. Some people don't feel that they have that flexibility or that privilege, and I get that. Not everybody has the ability or capability to just stand up to their boss and say, like, nope, I'm not coming back to the office. So you can suck it up and deal with it and let me work remote. Or you can, let me go as an employee and I'll go find some other job. not everybody has the ease and the comfort and the capability to make that kind of call. So it's it's with a heavy dose of privilege that I think I could say like, oh, just tell your boss you're not coming back to the office and you're just going to work remote forever. Not everybody's in that kind of position. So I would say if you're applying for a company, that would be one of the first questions I would be asking the recruiter. Like, is this company 100% remote or supporting 100% remote workers? Is there an expectation of coming back to an office at some point? Am I going to be expected to relocate? Ask those questions early on and then make your decision whether you want to progress through the interview process with them beyond that. If they say, like, oh, yeah, we want everyone to be back in the office by August, like, okay, well, I would really rather work remote. So is that a possibility? Well, now you need to talk to the recruiter about that. If the recruiter comes back and says like, no, we really want everybody to be back in the office in August, like, okay, well, I guess I'm not going to continue through this process because I don't want to get my hopes up, get a job offer for this job, and then have to, talk to the company about why I'm not coming back to the office in August when that was the expectation. I would rather know that up front and decide not to move ahead in an interview because it's not sort of meeting the goal that I want for my career. I want to work remote now. Me personally, though, I kind of like being in an office. Not gonna lie. I've actually chatted with a handful of folks that work at Postman who work in the Denver region. It's like, we get together for coffee at least like once a month. Like that would be kind of cool. Like just chill out and have a coffee. Like just have a little bit of FaceTime. Like, could we do that? Maybe. And a couple of them said that they want to. So we'll see whether that works out or not. Last month it didn't work out. I was the only one that showed up, but that's okay. We'll plan a little more carefully next time, so I'm not making a drive into Denver and paying for parking and have no one else show up. But whatever. Um, I think it really comes down to what is the company culture and what is the company going to help support, and knowing that stuff sooner than later in the interview process is going to be really key. So talk to the recruiter about it. Find out as early as you can if they have a plan to go back in person, if they're cool staying remote, and then what the support is going to look like if you do stay remote. Like if most of the company's going back to the office, but you're in a different geographic area and you're not going to be able to go back to the office, or let's say they're based in some other state and they hire you remotely to work now, but they want everybody back in the office in August, is like, well, I'm not going to relocate. So what's it going to look like when 90% of the staff are back in an office and a bunch of us stay remote? Like, how are we still going to have that support? Because that can be kind of an ongoing issue as well. It's kind of this whole out of sight, out of mind. Like when you're not in the office, you tend to get overlooked. You tend to get left out on meetings. You can sometimes be passed up for promotions and reviews and things like that because you're not physically there. Um, so every company's a little different. You and so you really have to talk to the company about it and see what their process is going to be. Zooey redeemed some chat points for a dad joke. Um, my friend said, your wife and daughter look like twins. Like, yeah, they were separated at birth. A dad joke command. How many South Americans does it take to change a light bulb? A Brazilian. Good times, good times. Cool. So yeah, I think I'll wrap up there. Been at it for almost an hour and a half. Appreciate everybody dropping by. Thanks for coming by. I'm going to stream a little more often with work, especially next week as I wrap up this API that I'm building for these live workshops that we're going to be doing. We're going to be going around to some meetups around the country. We've got a couple in the Denver, Boulder region. I think we got one or two in the New York region. So yeah, check out the Postman events and come by and say hi if you're in a region where Postman is going to be. I can't guarantee I'll be there, but I have let them know that I'm willing to hop on a plane, like get the heck out of Denver for a couple of days. It would be really great to go travel a little bit. But there's a conference coming here, GlueCon, I think in May, and there's a group that's doing a meetup like right before the conference and after the conference, and Postman is going to be part of those. So I'm looking forward to getting out and teaching some live workshops with live people in a live space. Looking forward to that. So, cool. Thanks for dropping by again. My apologies for not streaming for several sessions. I just had to get over this cold. This cold was really knocking me out. So, but I appreciate everybody dropping by. Thanks for all the questions in chat. I'm going to get all these links kind of collected, and we'll get those in the YouTube description a little bit later when I upload this. Thanks for dropping by. So again, on Sunday, we have Taylor Dorset from levels.fyi, and that's going to be at the same time on Sunday. And then that's the last Sunday evening. We're going to be doing like 11 a.m. or something on Sundays after. And so I think I've already got my Twitch schedule updated for that, so it should reflect properly on Twitch going forward. But we'll be doing that during the daytime on Sunday. Probably the same kind of like hour and a half kind of format. And then we'll always keep the Thursday evening one going. So we'll catch you all on Sunday with Taylor, and then we'll catch you next Thursday as well. Thanks for hanging out, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Let's go see who can we raid. Freckled Science on. Who else? Oh, Midnight Simon's on. I don't think we've rated Midnight Simon in a while. We'll go raid them. So Simon is someone who studied like crazy to get a Fang job, and they're going back and doing like live leak code types of problems. So we'll go raid Midnight Simon. We'll go say hi to them, and we'll support them. So make some noise in chat when you get over there. Drop some emojis and so on, and we'll catch you over on Simon's channel for a little bit, and then have a good night, and we'll see y'all on Sunday.